following devastating flooding in Kerr County. Texans are now asking, how can we avoid this kind of tragedy in the future?
At 3 a.m., the water was already at the house, and we had no warning.
My daughter was not identified until Thursday the 10th, and the only thing that identified her at all was her charm bracelet.
I've learned that the story we've been following after last year's flooding in Coryell County may have the kind of answers that state lawmakers are looking for.
Thanks so much for tuning in for the News at 5. I'm senior neighborhood reporter Bobby Portavant, right next to the Brazos River, which is one of the top 5 river watersheds here in the state of Texas. Now, that's a big deal as we continue to talk about flood mitigation across the state of Texas, and that's following the devastating and deadly floods that reported on just last month here in Central Texas. Now, one of our very own reporters who's been on top of those stories and those recovery efforts here in Central Texas is our own Allison Hill. Allison, what's the latest?
Well, Bobby, what already began as a historic flood mitigation effort in Coryell County may soon reach 100 counties statewide in 5 major river watersheds, including the Brazos, as Texas ramps up its push for flood prediction and early warning systems.
The wall of water that hit Kerr County was a wake-up call for communities across the Texas Hill Country.
On the heels of probably the deadliest natural disaster that Texas has ever seen, we're realizing that predictive nature of floods is incredibly important. No one could have predicted what happened in Kerrville. Basically the equivalent of what flows over Niagara Falls in 48 hours.
The deadly 4th of July floods exposed a gap in the state's warning system. Now lawmakers are looking to change that, and they may not have to start from scratch.
When the July 4th floods happened, a lot of people came out raising their hands saying, I have the solution, I have the solution. You guys are already doing this, just in a different part of Texas. Why do you think that makes that so attractive?
When you get a large rain event, you have rapid runoff, and then it channelizes through the rivers and valleys. So flash floods, again, occur rapidly. Here in Central Texas and the Hill Country, coastal flooding, storm surge flooding is different.
It would mirror what's been underway in another part of Texas for the better part of a year. From real-time flood gauges to prediction and early warning systems. Local leaders there can see when floods are coming and from where, all backed by funding from the Texas General Land Office.
We combine that with all the best tools and knowledge that we have today in terms of the Army Corps of Engineers model or the USGS groundwater model. So we are trying to bring in the best science that's possible in order to solve a particular problem here that we have actually, and that's right in our backyard.
Now the hope is to extend that project to 100 other counties across Flash Flood Alley, home to nearly 14 million people in 5 major river watersheds, including Kerr County.
This map it shows, the Flash Flood Alley area of Texas. The blue is the basin that we're currently modeling.
But this image shows it clearly, a huge stretch of the Hill Country with no flood gauges at all.
It sinks home for every one of us that have kids, grandkids, neighbors that have suffered as a result of this. It's our responsibility then to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen again.
That means putting people on the ground to gather data at more than 92,000 road and water crossings across the counties. A&M Central Texas plans to deploy recently retired veterans to help make that happen.
From Fort Hood through the military talent pipeline, we want to help those now veterans reintegrate into the civilian workforce, and this is an ideal population then to work with us on this project.
These one-pagers are now in the hands of the Texas Senate and House Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding. And in the wake of these storms, all eyes are on lawmakers to see how fast they can expand early flood alert systems across Texas before another storm strikes.
How quickly, if you guys can say, do you think you would be able to get that off the ground?
Each river basin in about a 6 to 9 month period, actually.
Concurrent initially?
Yeah.
And on our website at kxxv.com, you'll find a full breakdown of how this project began in Coryell County and how it could become the blueprint for what's to come across these 100 counties.
Allison, thank you so much for your continuing coverage on this. It's something that we'll definitely stay on top of. But one of the major questions that's on so many people's minds right now is warning sirens. How does that play a role in all of this?
Well, in order to sound the alarms, you have to have the right information, and that right information has to get to the people that have the authority to press that red button. So before all that, you have to have the studies, you have to have these real-time flood alert systems where they're put upstream so that the water surpasses a certain level. The flood gauges will alert the right people, and those people then can warn the community.
Very informative, a lot of information right there. But before we let you go, can you share with us kind of what's the next steps?
Sure. So the Texas Senate and House Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding, of course, has to give the green light on this. But these agencies said they're ready to hit the ground running. And as we heard, it could be 6 to 9 months.
Thanks, Allison. And as you just heard,